The snowstorm screamed like a wild beast across the empty plains. The sky was gray, the wind sharp like knives. Everything was whitenless snow, broken only by a small shape crawling in the cold. She was an alien woman, young and thin. Her skin pale lavender, almost blue from the freezing air. Her arms shook as she held something close to her chest, her baby. Wrapped in cloth scraps and pressed against her heart. The child didn't cry anymore. That scared her more than anything. "Just a little longer," she whispered, her voice broken and weak, but the baby didn't respond. Its breath was shallow, its skin turning cold. She looked up, but there was no one, no buildings, no lights. Not even trees, just snow. Snow. And death still. She kept walking. Barefoot, her feet numb, her legs like stone. Every step felt like a mountain, but she didn't stop. She reached a broken metal wall ruins of some old station. A small corner was still standing, half covered in ice. She crawled inside, fell to her knees, and placed the baby in her lap. She looked down at the tiny face. Eyes closed, lips turning pale, a sob escaped her throat. But she bit her lip and forced herself to smile. She started to hum a soft song her own mother once sang. The lullaby was from her old homeworld, now lost in war. The melody was slow. Trembling with sadness and hope, she sang even as her tears froze on her cheeks. The wind blew in through the cracks, but she wrapped her arms tighter around the child. Her voice cracked, her body shaking. "Sleep now, little star. Dream beyond this dark. When the ice is gone, you'll be safe and warm." Her voice faded with the wind. The baby didn't move. She leaned down and kissed its cold forehead. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Mama." Tried, then she closed her eyes, her body going limp, still holding the baby tight. And then crunch, crunch, footsteps in the snow. Her ears twitched, eyes opening weakly. She wasn't dreaming, the sound was real, heavy and slow. She turned her head and saw a figure through the white mist. It was tall, covered in thick gear, with glowing eyes behind a frost-covered helmet. A human. He stopped a few feet away, staring at her with surprise and confusion. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the wind howled between them. Then the human dropped his bag and rushed forward. He knelt beside her, eyes wide as he saw the baby. The mother tried to pull the child closer, thinking he might take it. But the human held up both hands, slowly, carefully. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." He reached into his pack and pulled out a glowing orange orb, a portable heat core. He set it beside the baby and activated it. Warmth filled the air like a miracle. Steam rose from their frozen clothes. The baby stirred just a little. The mother gasped, her eyes full of tears. The human gently took off his thick coat and wrapped it around both of them. "You're lucky I heard your song," he said quietly. "I thought it was the wind." The mother didn't understand all the words, but she felt them. She looked at him, truly looked. His face had scars. His eyes were tired, but kind. She tried to speak, her lips dry and cracked. He gave her a sip of warm liquid from his flask. She coughed, but swallowed it down, holding on to life. "Why?" "Help me," she whispered in broken English. The human looked at the baby, then at her. "No one should die like this," he said. "Not a child. Not a mother." She couldn't stop the tears anymore. She leaned her head against the coat, holding her baby tighter, and for the first time in days, she didn't feel alone. Outside, the blizzard kept howling, but inside the ruined wall, a human and an alien sat together, bound by warmth, survival, and one fading song. And somewhere in the snow, the universe shifted, just a little, because kindness had arrived. The snowstorm still roared outside, but inside the broken wall, something had changed. Warmth slowly returned to the air. The little heat orb glowed like a soft sun between the mother and her child. The baby twitched, letting out a tiny sound, a whimper. Then, a weak breath. The mother gasped and held her baby tighter, her eyes wide with hope. The human knelt beside them, quietly watching. He didn't say anything right away. Instead, he carefully placed down another small device near the child, a medical patch. It blinked once, scanned the baby's body, and started releasing warmth and nutrients through the skin. The alien mother blinked slowly, still unsure if this was real. She had been running for days, hiding from her own people. She hadn't seen a kind face in weeks. She hadn't seen fire since the last time her village was lit up in flames. But now, this strange man, this human, was helping. He sat back on his knees and pulled off his helmet. Steam rising from his short, dark hair. His face was weathered and rough, but his eyes were calm, like deep water. "You look like you haven't eaten in days," he said softly. She didn't understand all of it, but she saw his hand move toward his bag from inside. He pulled out a wrapped food pack and a small pouch of thick soup. He opened it and gently placed it near her, then sat a few feet away, giving her space. Her hands trembled as she reached for the food. She sniffed it first, an old habit, but the smell was warm and good. She tore off a piece and placed it near her baby's lips. The child sucked on it weakly, and she nearly collapsed. In relief, the human watched them quietly. He didn't speak unless needed. Instead, he adjusted a small portable shield he had set up near the entrance. It flickered to life, blocking out some of the wind. The mother finally looked up at him, confused. Most humans she had heard of were soldiers, slavers, or scientists. But this one, he came with heat, with medicine, and with no questions. "You, soldier?" she asked softly in broken English. The man shook his head. "Used to be," he replied. "Now I just help who I can." He tossed another stick into the heat orb's base, and it flared a little brighter. The orange light made the tiny shelter glow warmly. It was the first time in weeks the mother could feel her fingers again. "What's your name?" he asked after a pause. She hesitated, then said, "Yara." Her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "Yara, I'm Reen." There was a silence between them, but not a cold one. Yara looked down at her baby and whispered its name, Lemmy. Rain repeated it slowly, Lemmy. "Pretty name." Jira watched him carefully. Why was he here, alone in the snowfields? Why did he help an alien mother with nothing to offer? She asked him in broken words, "Why here? No people." Rain leaned back, staring at the white sky through the cracks in the wall. "I patrol the waste zones," he said. "Sometimes refugees pass through. Most don't make it. I try to find them first." Jera's eyes filled with tears, again not from sadness this time, but shock. Someone who searched for lost people just to help them. That didn't exist in her world, not anymore. Lemmy let out a small cough and shifted. In her arms, Shira smiled and kissed her child's forehead again. Then, she looked at Rain. Something like trust forming in her tired eyes. She pointed at him gently. "You?" "Fire hands," Rain laughed softly. "Guess you could say that." He reached out his palm toward the orb, letting the heat reflect against his fingers. Jira stared at the glow, then whispered, "Fire means life." Rain looked back at her and nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "And I'm not letting either of you freeze tonight, for the first time in a long time." Jira didn't feel like prey. She didn't feel like a curse, or an outcast, or a dying mother. She felt seen, protected even, if only for one night. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, a tiny flame burned bright, the flame of survival. The flame of something new, something almost like hope. The storm didn't end that night. It roared for 2 more days, covering the land in thick sheets of snow. But deep inside the mountains, where the winds could not scream, 3 souls found safety. A mother, her baby, and a human who asked for nothing in return. Rain led them through an old hidden path the next morning. Jira followed, carrying her child wrapped in the human's thick coat. Her legs were tired, her body still cold. But something inside her had changed. She was walking, not toward death anymore, but toward something new. They reached a narrow gap between two stone cliffs. Rain pressed his palm against a rock, and a hidden panel lit up. A small section of teeth. The cliff opened with a hiss. It was a hidden cave, a place he had prepared long ago. The inside was dry and warm. Old solar lights flickered to life as they entered. There were old supplies, sleeping pads, blankets, even a heater built into the wall. It was not fancy, but to Jira, it felt like a palace. She walked slowly to a corner, sat down, and unwrapped her child. Lemmy let out a soft cry, louder. This time Jira smiled through her tears. Rain knelt and checked the baby's vitals again. All normal now, he said, just weak. But she'll make it. Jira nodded, her fingers gripping her child protectively. Rain turned away to give her privacy and began preparing food. He lit up a small heat plate and placed metal bowls on top, pouring in dried stew mix and water. Within minutes, the smell of hot food filled the cave. Jira watched him quietly. She had never seen a human cook for an alien before. She had seen humans destroy, capture, dominate. But not this. He brought her a warm bowl and placed it in front of her without a word. She looked at it, then at him, unsure. Eat, he said gently. You need it more than me. She took the bowl with shaking hands and tasted it slowly. It wasn't her planet's food, but it was rich, full of life. She fed some to Lemmy, drop by drop, then slowly finished her own. Rain sat across the cave, chewing on a ration bar and checking a scanner every few minutes. He glanced toward them, making sure they were okay. Jira noticed this. He didn't hover or invade, but he watched, like someone who had lost people before. When they had eaten, Jira leaned against the cave wall, her baby asleep in her arms. She looked at Rain and finally asked, "Why do you help people like me?" Rain looked up, surprised by the question. He hesitated, then spoke softly. "I lost someone once. She was innocent, just like your child. But no one helped her." He looked down at his hands. "So now, I try to be the one who does." Jira didn't know what to say. In her world, kindness was weakness. But this man, he made it feel strong. "Your people, they do not stop you?" she asked carefully. Rain gave a small smile. "I don't follow orders anymore." He pulled back his sleeve and showed her a long scar burned into his arm. A soldier's mark crossed out. "Rejected. I don't belong to anyone now," he said. "I go where I'm needed." Jira lowered her eyes, thinking. She had always believed her child was doomed because she was born weak. But this human saw her baby and gave her warmth, food, and protection without fear. Could it be that everything she had been taught was wrong? She whispered. "I was told my child is cursed." Rain raised his eyebrows. "Why?" "Born with soft bones, no strength. Tribes say she will bring ruin." Rain looked at the baby, sleeping peacefully. He scoffed softly. "She's not cursed. She's beautiful." Jira blinked, her heart pounding. No one, not even her own family, had said those words before. She felt something heavy lift from her chest, like chains she never knew were there. Rain stood and walked to the entrance of the cave. Adjusting the outside sensors, Jira rocked her baby gently and began to hum again. The same lullaby from the blizzard, but this time softer, warmer. The sound filled the cave like magic. Rain paused and listened, his face unreadable. Then he smiled and whispered to himself, "Maybe I didn't find them. Maybe they found me outside." The storm began to quiet. Inside, a small family that didn't exist yesterday started to form. The morning after the storm was strangely quiet. Outside the cave, the snow lay like a soft white ocean, untouched and endless. Inside, the cave was warm, glowing with soft yellow light. But Jira didn't sleep. She sat near the heater, holding her child and staring at the fire like it could speak. Rain noticed, but didn't disturb her. He boiled water silently, preparing a new meal with the last of his supplies. The baby was better, now breathing stronger, cheeks no longer gray, but Jira's eyes held something deeper than tiredness. Something like fear trapped in silence. Rain placed a warm cup beside her and finally asked, "What happened to you?" Jira didn't speak right away. She looked at her baby, kissed her forehead, and then closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, her voice came out slow, soft, cracked like old stone. "You ever been told you gave birth to evil?" Rain blinked. No. Jira held her child tighter. "My baby. Born wrong," Tribe said. "Why?" he asked gently, sitting down on the ground across from her. "She was soft," Jira whispered, "not strong like warriors. Bones not grow right. No claws, no rage." Rain shook his head. "That's not wrong. That's just different." Jira looked at him sharply. "To my people, different is danger. Weakness is shame. The elders said I must leave the child outside at night. To let the cold choose." Rain clenched his fists, his face hardening. "You refused." "I ran," Jira whispered. "In the night, I stole food, wrapped my baby, and ran into the snow." Her voice trembled now, her eyes filling with water that didn't fall. "Many mothers have done it. None come back. They say it's mercy. I call it murder." Rain took a deep breath, feeling a knot form in his chest. He looked at the woman in front of him, not just a refugee. She was a fighter, but not the kind with weapons. She had fought with love, with pain, with the will to carry a child through death itself. "I thought I was going to die," she said, voice breaking, when the baby stopped crying. "I sang her last lullaby." "I thought that was the end," Rain whispered, "but it wasn't." Jira looked up at him. "You came. Why?" Rain leaned back against the stone wall and stared up at the ceiling. He let the silence stretch for a while before he answered. "Because someone once didn't come for me," he said. "I was young. My outpost was attacked. Everyone died. I hid under dead bodies to survive." Jira covered her mouth in shock. Rain continued. "I waited 3 days for help. None came. I swore if I lived, I'd never leave someone to die like I was left." His eyes met hers, steady and calm. "I heard your voice in the storm. I didn't know what I'd find, but I had to follow it." Jira touched her heart and whispered, "You followed a broken song." Rain smiled faintly. "It saved your baby." Jira looked down at her daughter and finally let the tears fall, silent, gentle, free. Rain didn't speak. He simply handed her a cloth, and then turned away, giving her space. After some time, Jira asked, "Do humans sing to children too?" Rain nodded. "Yeah, lullabies, stories, even silly songs. Sing one," she said, surprising herself. Rain chuckled awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I haven't sung in years," but Jira looked at him with tired eyes that had cried enough, so he sighed and softly began. It was a simple earth song about stars and dreams. The words didn't match hers, but the feeling did. Lemmy stirred in her sleep, smiling in her dreams. When the song ended, Jira whispered, "Your voice is not bad." Rain laughed quietly. High praise from someone who sings in blizzards. 4. The first time Jira smiled, truly smiled, it was small, unsure, but it was real. They sat together, not as alien and human, but as two broken souls who had chosen to heal. Outside, the snow was beginning to melt under a rising sun, and deep inside the shelter of stone, Kindness wrote a story that war had tried to erase. Rain woke up first, his hand already near his weapon. Old soldier habits didn't fade. He listened, no sound from outside, only the quiet breath of snow melting under a weak sun. He stood and checked the scanners. Nothing close. Yet, but something still didn't feel right. The silence was too perfect. Jira was still asleep, curled up near the heater with Lemmy tucked against her chest. Her face looked peaceful, but even in sleep, her hand never left her baby's back. Rain watched them for a moment and felt something strange inside. Not pity, not duty. Something warmer, something like belonging. But there was no time for feelings. Danger was coming. He saw it in the sky, a flicker of a red light. A drone. Rain's face tightened. "They found us," he whispered. He woke Jira gently. Her eyes opened fast, alert, like a hunted animal. "They're coming," he said. "You have 10 minutes to pack anything you want to carry." Jira didn't ask who. She already knew. She quickly wrapped Lemmy in thick fabric and secured her to her back. Rain grabbed a heat orb, medkits, and a small energy shield. He tossed Jira a blaster. "I've never used," she said, hesitating. "Good," he replied. "But today? You might have to." They left the cave, fast and quiet. The snow crunched under their boots as they moved through the forest edge. The wind had slowed, but the cold still bit their faces. Rain led them through narrow paths and frozen ravines. He knew the land, but the drones were smarter now. They flew low, scanning with red beams. One of them passed directly overhead. They froze behind an icy boulder until it zipped away. "They're not here just for you," Rain muttered. Jira looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" Rain showed her a broken communicator with a blinking signal. "They're tracking me too," he said. "Ex-soldier. Marked rogue." Jira's eyes widened. "You are hunted, like me." He nodded. "I broke orders. Saved refugees instead of killing them. The army doesn't like that." Jira said nothing, but her eyes changed for the first time. She didn't see a human, she saw a fellow exile. They moved through frozen cliffs until they reached a hidden crack in the mountain. Inside was a tunnel, a natural path shaped by water and time. It led underground, safe from the sky. Rain activated a torch and handed another to Jira. They walked for hours, only stopping when Lemmy whimpered for food. Jira sat against the rock, cradling her child, feeding her drops from a ration gel Rain had given her. "She is stronger," Jira whispered, smiling softly. "She is," Rain replied. "She's a fighter. Like her mother." But peace never lasted long in their world. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Rain's tracker beeped once. Someone had entered from the other side, down. He shouted, grabbing Jira and rolling behind a rock wall. Blaster fire lit the tunnel in red and blue sparks. Jira screamed and covered Lemmy's ears, shielding her body. Rain returned fire with calm. Trained precision. 2 enemies down, 1 remained, moving fast, too fast. Jira looked around and found a sharp rock nearby. As the attacker lunged toward Rain, she threw it, striking the alien in the temple. Rain finished him with 1 shot, breathing heavily. They both crouched in the dark silence. Then Rain turned to her. "Why died? You saved me." Jira was still shaking. "I didn't know I could." "You can," he said firmly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think." The torch flickered, casting shadows over their faces. They had survived another attack, but now the truth was clear. They weren't just running. They were hunted by both her people and his. The world didn't want them alive. Not the mother. Not the child. Not even the human who helped. But still, they chose to live. Jira looked at him, breathless. "Where now?" Rain replied, "There's an outpost. Far from here, hidden. It takes days on foot, but it's safe. Will they accept me?" She asked, fear in her voice. Rain paused, then said, "They accepted me. That's proof they take broken people." Jira tightened the wrap around Lemmy. The baby stirred, yawned, and went back to sleep. Rain checked the ammo and looked at the icy ceiling. "We keep moving," he said. "No matter who wants us dead," Jira whispered. "We live for her." Rain looked at the mother, the baby, and then at the dark path ahead. "Yes," he said, "for her." The wind had changed. It no longer howled like a ghost. Now it carried something heavier. The scent of fuel, the sound of metal wings slicing. The sky Rain knew what that meant. "They're not just using drones anymore," he muttered. "They've sent hunters." Jira stood still beside him, her baby pressed to her chest. Lemmy was asleep again, wrapped tightly, but peace wouldn't last long. Rain's tracker blinked red anomie, signals closing in fast, too many for them to outrun, too armed to fight from the open. He scanned the ice-covered cliffs ahead. "There." He pointed. "That cave. It's narrow. They'll have to come in one at a time." Jira didn't hesitate. She ran for the opening, boots slipping across the snow. Rain followed close behind, setting traps along the path trip wires. Heat mines, broken glass, every second counted. Inside, the cave was dark, tight, and cold. But it was cover, and cover was hope. They hid deep behind jagged rocks as the noise of engines grew louder. Then, silence. Jira gripped her daughter tighter, trying to keep her breath low. Rain checked his weapon and whispered, "When they come in, don't freeze." "I won't," Jira said quietly. "Not this time." The first hunter entered tall, armored in black and blue plates. Rain fired a quick shot, one hit to the chest. The second tripped a mine snow and sparks exploded. The third rushed in screaming, blind with rage. Jira stood up, her eyes locked on the enemy. She raised her blaster with both hands. Her arms shook, but she didn't flinch. She pulled the trigger. The energy bolt struck the attacker's faceplate crack. The figure collapsed with a sharp grunt she had never killed before. Her heart pounded like thunder, but she felt no shame, only fire. The fire of a mother protecting her child. Rain took down two more, but his shoulder was grazed. He groaned and fell back behind the stone, blood dripping on the frozen ground. Jira crawled to him. Pulling out the med save he had taught her to use, she pressed it to his wound. "Hands steady now." "I'm not letting you die," she said, teeth clenched. Rain smiled, weak but proud. "Didn't know you had it in you." "I didn't either." She whispered, "Until today, another attacker tried to enter, but then paused." Smoke drifted from the cave mouth. Bodies lay on the snow outside. The last soldier backed away and ran. Rain pulled himself up slowly, his hand gripping the wall for balance. "They're retreating." For now, Jira helped him to his feet, her hands strong, her eyes clear. "You said we couldn't win if we stayed in the open." Rain nodded, "But we did, outside." The snow was no longer pure. It was streaked with blood, marked with footprints and fire. But Lemmy was still breathing. Jira was still standing. And Rain, though wounded, was alive. They stepped outside, the cold air hitting their faces. The baby stirred and opened her eyes, looking up at the white sky. Jira looked at Rain, then at her child, and said softly, "She's not cursed." "No," Rain replied, "she's your strength." For the first time, Jira held her head high, not in pride, but in purpose. She was no longer a mother running from shame. She was a protector, a fighter, a survivor. They began walking again, slower this time, but with new confidence. Every step away from the battlefield felt like claiming freedom, and though their shadows stretched across bloodied snow, their hearts carried the light of something sacred, the bond between a mother, a child, and a human who dared to believe they mattered. Three figures walked across the frozen wasteland. A trail of red behind them, fading into white. A woman with tired but strong eyes, A baby asleep against her chest, and a wounded human, limping but still standing. The wind no longer screamed. It whispered now, soft and distant. Like even the storm had accepted their will to live, they reached the edge of a cliff by sunset. Beyond it, hidden in the valley, something shimmered, not ice, not snow, but metal walls, low lights, smoke rising from chimneys. Jira stopped and stared, her lips parting in awe. "Is that it?" she asked, afraid it might disappear. Rain nodded, smiling through the pain. "Yeah. That sanctuary, it didn't look like much from far away, just a circle of structures buried in snow. But to them, it was everything. A place where no one would ask what species you were, only if you were hungry, or cold, or hurt." They reached the gates by nightfall. A drone scanned them silently, then the gate hissed open. Warm air rushing out like a welcome hug. Inside, lights hung from wires. People, human and alien alike, moved between buildings. Some cooked, some repaired broken parts, some played music near heaters. No guards aimed weapons. No one shouted orders, just life simple, rough but free. A woman in a patched coat rushed forward. She looked at Rain's arm and clicked her tongue. "You again? You promised not to bleed this time." Rain grinned. "I broke that promise." Then her eyes fell on Jira and the baby. She blinked, then softened. "And you brought more," she said quietly. "Yes," Rain replied, "and they stay." The woman nodded without question. "Come, all of you. You're safe now." Jira followed in a daze. She was given a room small, but warm, a bed with blankets, clean sink, and soft light. She laid Lemmy down for the first time without fear of her freezing. The child sighed, eyes fluttering open just long enough to see the soft ceiling. Jira felt her knees beside the bed, her hands trembling. She had done it. She had carried her baby through death itself. And now? Her daughter would sleep with full lungs and warm skin. Rain stood in the doorway, arm wrapped in bandages. He watched silently as Jira touched her child's face. He had seen mothers bury their children. He had never seen one save her like this. "She's going to be okay," he said softly. Jira turned to him, tears in her eyes again this time. "They didn't hurt." "Yes," she whispered. "Because you followed my song." Rain chuckled and leaned against the frame. "Wasn't much of a song. It was enough," she replied, smiling fully for the first time that night. Jira joined the others in the shared hall. There was food real, food and laughter, and voices from across the galaxy. Someone handed her a bowl without asking who she was. Another offered her a blanket for her baby. Rain sat beside her, his shoulder aching but his heart light. Gara looked around, taking it all in. "No one here sees me as broken," she whispered. "No one here is broken," Rain said. "Only rebuilding." She touched her daughter's tiny hand. "I want her to grow here, to know kindness before cruelty." "She will," Rain promised, "as long as I'm breathing." Jira didn't answer, but the way she looked at him said everything. Not just thanks, but trust, and something deeper, something only two survivors could share. Later, she wrapped Lemmy in a soft cloth and sang again. The same lullaby, but with different meaning now. It was no longer a song of goodbye. It was a welcome, a beginning outside. The stars blinked through the night sky. The snow fell gently, not to bury, but to heal. And inside that little outpost, lost in the cold, a child breathed her first dream of peace. She would never remember the blizzard, but she would grow up, knowing the arms that carried her, the song that saved her, and the human who refused to let her freeze.